The KEF Reference 1 was originally released in 2014, building upon the success of the LS50 from 2013. Both of these designs drew from the technology of the KEF Blade, which was a cost-no-object speaker that KEF had built in 2011. The KEF reference line has a very unique appearance. While the cabinets use MDF, like most speakers, the front baffle has an aluminum and resin composite plate that is bolted to the front of the cabinet. While Dynaudio also uses an aluminum front baffle system for their Confidence lineup of speakers, their design is a bit more elaborate and masks the aluminum panel with paint finishes and curved waveguides, so it's not as clear that it's a distinctly different material than the rest of the speaker. With KEF, the transition between the body of the enclosure and the front baffle is much more direct. The front baffle has a very raw, brushed aluminum look with a solid block-like appearance, and the waveguides are actually separate pieces that are inserted into the baffle. It's a very unique look. Appearance-wise, the original KEF reference and the Meta series are quite similar, although with some minor changes. The original reference lineup was launched with black woofers and reflective trim rings around the drivers. Late in the life of the original reference lineup, after the R series were refreshed in 2018, some new finishes were introduced that included a new trim ring design with a matte instead of a reflective appearance. The metal line has included all of these updated style changes. When listening to these speakers, it's obvious to me that the Meta has a slightly wider dispersion than the original. In addition, the mid-range output has dropped somewhat, which makes percussion instruments sound softer and more recessed. Overall, this results in a softer, leaner presentation with the Meta, while the originals were darker sounding, with a more prominent mid-range. This causes the Meta in general to have a soundstage that feels pushed further back than the originals. The difference is most pronounced with synthetic or studio music. On the Metas, the recessed mids end up causing it to sound more like live music, whereas on the originals, with the greater mid-range output, they have a habit of doing the opposite. Live music ends up feeling more closed in and sounding more like studio or synthetic music. Bass performance is very similar, although the Meta perceptively sounds more bassy due to the lower output in the mid-range. Also, the Meta has slightly flatter treble performance. Both the LS50 and the original KEF Reference 1 had slightly rising response at around 2 kHz that has been fixed with a new waveguide. All in all, I would consider this a very incremental improvement to the original, to a speaker that was already very good. Although the difference in mid-range output will probably cause some to prefer the originals over the Meta, depending on your taste in music, as vocals and percussion instruments do get pushed into the background. Personally, I prefer acoustic and instrumental music, and these changes are to my liking, although if you prefer clearer vocals, you may decide the originals are better for you. And in the end, these differences are minor enough that any differences can easily be bridged with equalization. So in conclusion, if you don't already own the Metas, I would recommend them as a cost-no-object speaker. I've heard many of the top speakers, including Gentle Like the Ones, speakers with diamond drivers, the Dynaudio Confidence lineup, Paradigm Persona, the TAD ME1s, etc. These KEF Reference 1 Metas are about as good as you can get in this form factor. So if you already own the originals, I would definitely try to secure a demo with both if possible to see if the sound signature changes are to your liking.